Welcome back. If you've only just joined us, you're watching the Daily Roundup with Nina. Now, the Bank of Namibia relaunched the SME Economic Recovery Loan Scheme earlier today. The SME Economic Recovery Loan Scheme is a scheme meant to assist distressed small and medium enterprises participating through commercial banks and to strengthen resilience and enhance inclusive post-pandemic economic recovery through improved governance and real sector reform. Now, with more on this, I'm joined by senior economist at the Bank of Namibia, Dina Hamutumwa. Dina, good evening and welcome to the Daily Roundup.
Good evening and thanks for having me.
Talk to us about what some of the challenges faced in the SME economy, especially post-COVID-19.
Nina, the SME sector has been experiencing a lot of challenges since, I think, the beginning of 2016. We are all aware that the economy has been experiencing some contractions for the past few years. So the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent lockdowns were really using the lack of better word, the last nail on the coffin for those SMEs that were already struggling. So post-COVID, a lot of these SMEs we have been impacted. They struggled to manage their cash flows and they were struggling to meet their short-term obligations such as rent or paying salaries or even just loan repayments and NAMRA compliance. As a result, their profits have depreciated and they experience financial losses. Now, the pandemic, despite the fact that the pandemic is over, I think the SME sector is still experiencing a lot of challenges, especially given the geo-economic climate that we are in at the moment, plus the external shocks such as the Russia-Ukraine war, which is also causing some supply chain issues to our SMEs. So these SMEs really experience a number of challenges since 2016, plus the COVID pandemic. So a lot of them had to lay off some employees. They had limited, their balance sheets had deteriorated, so they couldn't access financing, and as a result, some of them even unfortunately had to close down.
The central bank relaunched the SME Economy Recovery Loan Scheme this morning. Tell us about that.
Okay, Nina, about 2 years ago, during the COVID pandemic, the Bank of Namibia, together with the Ministry of Finance and Public Enterprises, launched a COVID-19 scheme which was aimed towards helping businesses recover and help save jobs during the pandemic. As we are all aware that there was no activity happening during COVID, and the ultimate aim was really to provide working capital and liquidity for these businesses in order to manage their cash flows and also to a certain extent cover some certain fixed costs that they were experiencing. And as such, 500 million was availed to the sector. However, since then, only 6.4 million was utilized for this purpose. So we as an industry, we had to go back to the drawing board between ourselves, the commercial banks, the participating commercial banks, which were FNB, Nedbank, Bank Windhoek, as well as Standard Bank Namibia. We had to go back to the drawing board, and various challenges were highlighted in terms of why the scheme was not fully utilized. And as a key industry player, we thought we might need to relaunch this scheme with better criteria for this business, because some of the challenges were highlighted were that the qualifying criteria was a bit too stringent for these SMEs. There was also criteria for the SMEs to have a good standing certificate. So some of these things we had to go back as an industry and rectify in order to make it more accommodating for our SMEs, hence the relaunch today. The relaunch has now been renamed to SME Economic Recovery Scheme, which was previously a COVID-19 scheme. So now the scheme has been expanded beyond COVID, and it's aimed at helping all existing SMEs that are currently experiencing either working capital issues or funding issues. So we want to make it easier for these SMEs to access funding.
Tell us about some of the features pertaining to this loan scheme, Dina.
Okay. The qualifying amount is between 50,000 Namibian dollars to 10 million Namibian dollars, based obviously on the SME's balance sheet and growth projections. And it's also subject to the banking institution's credit assessment policy. So the scheme itself is guaranteed by government. However, um, um, the we also encourage SMEs to participate in this scheme through our various commercial banks. So any SME that has an annual turnover not exceeding 60 million Namibian dollars can participate in these schemes. The loans are granted at the prevailing prime lending rate minus 50 basis points. We tried our best to make it cheaper for these SMEs. There is the obligation to pay interest and capital on this loan will be deferred for 6 months. So the first time you apply for this loan, you get 6 months interest-free period. And also, as a entity, registered entities with BIPA, only those that are registered entities are allowed to participate. Also, participants should be registered with NAMRA, with our National Tax Authority, Namibian Revenue Agency, NAMRA, and should be tax compliant. One other feature is that for an SME to qualify for this scheme, they should have not participated in the scheme before, meaning that they shouldn't have they won't be allowed to have multiple economic recovery loans.
Let's look at the methods that local businesses can adopt to sustain the business in the long run and avoid possible closure.
Nina, there is no one-fit-all solution, but I think if I can maybe highlight a few that I would want to encourage that our SMEs also adapt to sustain the business going forward. One is to employ qualified bookkeeping and qualified financial accountants to reconcile their company records, because we are aware that the banks require this when submitting or when you are accessing financing. You need to be in good standing with the receiver, because we also want to encourage a good principle in terms of good standing certificate with a tax revenue agency. SMEs should also prepare their companies to survive and sustain in the world that has been disrupted by digital evolution. I think we can't really hide from the fact that the way we do business has evolved over the past few years, and I'm urging that our SMEs also make use of digital platforms to evolve in terms of going forward. They should be agile and be able to adapt to the latest technologies, like using e-commerce to their advantage. Also, I would want to encourage that SMEs should reconsider and rethink the business models that they are currently operating in, so that they tailor fit themselves for the future that we are looking as Namibians. Also, SMEs need to take advantage of potential opportunities, particularly in the developing sectors like green hydrogen, oil, rare earth metals, and not wait on foreign investors. I think we are all aware that the way we conduct business in Namibia is changing, and I think that brick and mortar type of business is probably not fit for the future, and we need to evolve as businesses to fit the future that we are trying to envisage for Namibia.
Indeed. And what does the Bank of Namibia hope to achieve, Dina, with the SME Economy Recovery Loan Scheme?
First of all, the launch really is to increase awareness and emphasize the critical changes that are featured in the new scheme, and potentially create a buzz or traffic towards towards that scheme. We want to improve business confidence for SMEs. We want to revive the SME sector by providing access to financing, because we are aware that access to financing is one of the major challenges that SMEs face. We want to increase SME participation and make use of the scheme to grow and expand their businesses, cover their operational expenses and working capital. In such, we hope and aim that the SME, by stimulating the SMEs, they are able to contribute to growth and economic recovery, which in turn will also improve employment, the level of poverty, and also indirectly reduce dependency on government grants. So we have a lot of expectations, and that's why we are committed towards this scheme. We also want to grow and connect small businesses to help them cover to deliver financial inclusion for our communities, because we are aware that there's still a very big segment of the Namibian sector that is excluded from that is not part of financial inclusion. So we want to help those SMEs that are playing in those sectors really to be able to deliver services to our communities, because we are aware that SMEs are the backbones of our communities. SMEs across Africa have the potential to increase the inter-regional trade, especially with the formation of the African Continent Free Trade Area. So in stimulating and providing funding to these SMEs, we really hope that we can contribute to economic growth and economic recovery, and in turn also contribute to the growth of the African continent.
Dina, thank you so much for joining us this evening here on the Daily Roundup.
No, thank you, Nina, for having me. Bye.
That was Dina Hamtumwa, who is Senior Economist at the Bank of Namibia, speaking to us via Zoom. Let's take an